Morning and welcome everyone. As announced, today's talk is on rounds. And races. In all of the literature, the rounds are also referred to as rings. So if you come across both of those, or circlings, if you come across any one of them, it means rounds. And you will also see life wave, which is the monadic host, all of us. In the literature, both ISIS and the Secret Doctrine, and also chapter 3 of the Ocean, this topic is addressed. However, in the Secret Doctrine, it is spread all over the book, so you will not find it on one page, but many pages, and I can put these pages on the board at the end of the talk. It is a very vast subject. Only an outline will be given today, and the details can be filled by you when you go to these pages and look it up, because it is necessary for each one to verify the correctness of it according to our understanding at this time. It is extremely metaphysical in one sense, and also remembering that the Secret Doctrine, even though it addresses the coming about of the solar system and the worlds, mostly it is concerned with Earth in round D. Now, what is a round? What is a circle? What is a ring? She tells us in the Secret Doctrine that Earth is sevenfold. In other words, it has 7 rings that roll in space together. They're not separate from one another. They interblend and they circle in the heavens or in the space all together. There are 2 words that you will come across. It is coordination and consubstantiality. What does those words mean? Coordination means that it's a one mass, because they interchange one another and they roll in space together. It is not in consubstantiality, meaning that its substance is not the same. Each ring or each level of consciousness, because this is reference to our consciousness. When we are on one, we do not perceive the others, because our consciousness is in that particular mode of expression and understanding. So we do not perceive the other 6. So its substance is different. Now, I'm not talking about the solar system here. Mars, Venus, and all of the other planets of our solar system, like Earth, belongs to the D, because its substance is similar, so we perceive the 4th level of each planet, but not the other 6, because they are all septenary. Each planet is septenary. So it was very interesting here, which says that this subject, as it is expressing evolution in one sense, it needs to be looked at as the symbology of the outline which is given to us. This student never had seen that expression before. Symbology means that it represents something, but that as you go into it and study deeper and deeper, the symbology opens up and enables you to understand what is lying behind it. So putting that aside also, we will go on. I have this, if you can please give it out. I don't have perhaps as many as I should have brought, but as you know, the life wave was on the moon chain before. And this is in the Secret Doctrine where HPB shows us how the moon chain referred or sent out its energy to the 7 localities of the Earth chain. So the Earth is the mother, I'm sorry, the moon is the mother of the Earth. The moon is the mother of the Earth. So we were on the moon chain before we came to the Earth chain, and that diagram shows how this was achieved, and it also shows that we are indeed septenary. The Earth chain is septenary. So we will look at this diagram, please, and I will explain how this wave occurs. At first, we were on the lunar chain on globe A, then on B, C, D, E, F, G. She tells us that the life waves occur in 7 parts. 7 parts.
Do you recall where I find this in the Secret Doctrine?
Yes, I'm going to give the pages. Let's see. Should have put page number down. Okay, on page 77 she says,
Volume 1?
yes, no, 2, volume 2. She
On
says,
page 77, you can find a complete copy of the Secret Doctrine at www.ufos.org.
don't interrupt me. On page 77, she makes this comment. They, the moon gods, went, each on his allotted land, 7 of them, each on his lot. The lords of the flame remained behind. Our progenitors, divine progenitors, creating men on 7 portions of the globe, each on his lot, a different race of men externally and internally, and on different zones. Now, I'm going to take this off and rewrite. So, the first part of the life wave comes to A. Okay? The first. Now, she tells us that the most developed, and in the beginning of the Manvantara, actually, it's the lunar Pitris, our Pitar fathers, that physically incarnate first. They come as the most advanced and cultivate. And then, when the first life wave has reached as much experience on globe A, then it moves to B. Okay? And when the A group goes to B, the second group comes into A. So in progressive fashion, one after the other, this process goes on as described on that diagram. We were first on A, then we go to B, and when the first wave goes to C, then the second wave that was on A moves to B. So in cyclic fashion then, this progression goes on. She also tells us that while this circling is going around, at the end of the seventh, humanity will reach its highest potential that can be reached on the earth chain. Highest that we can achieve. Where are we in the scheme of things? We are on globe D of that diagram, which is at the bottom, and it is the most consolidated because it is material objective has been reached. This is as material as we shall be. From now on the upper part, because we have now passed the middle point of D, and we are going, she says, towards a spirituality. Our material nature having been completely generated and perfected, our material bodies, now we are going to circle around and become ethereal as we go on. These are not my words, and I will read it to you from the Secret Doctrine. So, our concern then should be, for the most part, D. She says that analogy and correspondence applies in all aspects of the philosophy, but if we do not understand why we are here, what our goal is, and how we are going to achieve it, then there is no need for us to talk about all the other globes, correct? Because what analogy and correspondence would we be using to understand them? So as a general rule then, we start on A, B, C, D. How many complete circles have we done? 3. We have, all of humanity has done a circling around A, around B, around C, and now we are on D. We are the 5th subrace of the 5th root. In each complete circling, 7 root races are generated. 7 root, 7 times 7 sub races, and 49 times 7, 300 and what is it? I multiplied it this morning. Oh, I didn't put it on here. I thought I did. What is it?
343, I think.
343. Thank you. I think it is too. Okay. This many family races. Because the root comes and achieves as much development as it can, then it starts diminishing. But it shoots out branches, so to speak, like a tree, and those then go on developing further. So we are the 5th subrace of the 5th root. What is left in this round then? We are to bring about in the Americas the 6th root, and that is going to go through the whole, this whole circling of the subs and the family, then the 7th root, and it's going to repeat the same process, and at the end of the 7th, the highest development on earth having been achieved, we will go into a terrestrial rest. And in between the races and the sub-races, this rest also takes place. And I found a reference to it in the Secret Doctrine. It's at the bottom of this diagram, actually, where it says, occultism divides the period of rest, which is called pralaya, into several kinds. There is the individual pralaya of each globe. So when we are moving one from the other, there's a rest period in between. As humanity and life pass on to the next, 7 minor pralayas in each round will take place. The planetary pralaya, when 7 rounds are completed, right? This is 7 rounds on this here, each globe being one of them. And then we go 7 times around the whole thing. The solar pralaya, when the whole system is at an end, when the whole Earth has reached its maximum development, then we go into rest. And finally, the universal Maha Pralaya at the close of the age of Brahma. What's the age of Brahma? We had a universal talk about that last week, and the student had told us billions and billions of years. But Mr. Judge in the Ocean of Theosophy gives exact dates. A Maha Manvantara, he tells us, is 311 trillion years, and plus some other billions. 311 trillion. And that is divided into 4 ages: golden, silver, bronze, and Kali, which is the dark age. This is what we are in at the moment. Kali Yuga, which is over 400,000 years. 5,000 years of which have been expended, and HPB came for that cycle to initiate the upper lifting of the mind by lighting that change in us, that the mind is not just going to be intellectual, but it is going to become intuitional. Because when the lower mind is embedded in substance, our desires kind of become materialistic, and it drags the whole nature down. But in this coming race, intuition and the inner perceptive powers have to be developed, because it is going to be a higher race. And those of us from this 5th who are fitted to move on shall live with the new race, HPB tells us, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The new race being a higher race, we have to fit ourselves into that mode of living if we want to continue with that development which is gifted to ourselves. This, she tells us, at the end of the chapter here on page 446, and I will quote: "The 5th race will not die, but survive for a while, overlapping the new race for many 100,000s of years to come. It will become transformed with it, slower than its new successor, still getting entirely altered in mentality, in general physique and stature. Mankind will not grow again into giant bodies as the case of the Lemurians and the Atlanteans, because while the evolution of the 4th race led the latter down to the very bottom of materiality in its physical development, the present race is on its ascending arc. That is us, the 5th subrace of the 5th root, and the 6th will be rapidly growing out of its bonds of matter and even of flesh." What is it that the other race going to develop as a gift? Because each race develops a gift. We have 5 senses at this. The 6th she refers to as permeability, and she says that is not going to be its proper name. It will be given a proper name when it exhibits itself. What's permeability? Seeing through things, obviously. As we're going to become less material and more ethereal, obviously a different kind of body is what we are going to be assuming. Thus it is the mankind of the new world, one by far the senior of our old one, Patala, which is America, whose mission and karma it is to sow the seeds for a forthcoming, grander, and far more glorious race than any of those we know at the present. Humanity is the child of cyclic destiny, and not one of its units can escape its unconscious mission or get rid of the burden of its cooperative work with nature. Thus will mankind, race after race, perform its appointed cycle pilgrimage. Climates will and have already begun to change. Look at what she's telling you. Each tropical year after the other, dropping one subrace, but only to beget another higher race on the ascending cycle, while a series of other less favored groups, the failures of nature, will, like some individual man, vanish from the human family without even leaving a trace behind. Now this saddens me that some of us will perish because we will not fit into the new mode of thinking and living. Before thou hast even begun to say, I am the progeny of the departed moment, the child of the past, thou hast become that past itself. Before thou utterest the last syllable, behold, thou art no more the present, but verily the future. So, humanity's future then is dependent on the Americas. This is where the amalgamation, all of the human races are going on at this time. And in one of her writings, she tells us, nay, it has already begun. So, for us, the sixth subrace is amongst us, and in time, the anomaly is going to be the norm, and we are going to be the anomaly. So it is up to us then to understand and to alter and to change our natures to fit into the new mode of living. Okay, so now let's see what else. I have a lot to say and I'll run out of time. Okay, we'll have another one of these and continue with it. But let me see where it was. Okay. We did all that. And that. Thus, the planetary chain consists of 7 globes, as on that chart, and the life wave remains on each globe after reaching it in each round until it completes 7 root races divided into 49 sub-races and 343 family races. And we talked about the pralaya that takes place after each one. Now, I must make a little reference to the races as well. And we have already said that we are the 5th sub-race of the 5th. Now, what stock did we come from? Again, in the secret doctrine, we are talking about our Earth and how humanity started here. On page 6 of the secret doctrine number 2, she tells us where it was started, and she gives it a name for clarity's sake and continues the explanation. The imperishable sacred land. This sacred land, of which not much can be said, obviously, is the beginning of the humanity. It is the cradle of the first man and the dwelling of the last divine mortal, chosen as a shishta for the future seed of humanity. These are very different words than what we are used to, but Shishta is the spiritual group that is left of the whole, which makes the new root. So it comes from here that the other branch comes out of, because they're going to be more advanced, but the essence is working amongst the fifth subrace. And it is imperishable because it will always be there. And I looked it up in the Secret Doctrine again. It says that it was the Arctic region that was first peopled. Arctic, North Pole. Now the second one, she calls it the Hyperborean, which is the second continent. And the North Pole then expanded into northern Asia, she says, and this is the name given to it, and this is where the second root was established. The third continent, Lemuria, she says that's not really what its name is, and the old books give its real name, but she does not give it. She says it was invented just for this purpose, and it includes some portions of what is now Africa and the Indian Ocean to Australia and some of the Pacific and all the way to Ceylon, Madagascar, Ceylon and Sumatra. It is the fourth continent, which is called Atlantis, again a name given to it, and the fifth, she says, was in America. But then she goes on all the way to the bottom where she says, but as the sequence of the continents is made to follow the order of evolution of the races, from the first to the fifth, our Aryan root race, Europe, must be called the fifth great continent. And you know that most of the Americas, especially northern part of it, was peopled from Europe, was it not? So they're our ancestors. There was a time when the delta of Egypt and northern Africa also belonged to Europe. So you must not just consider the little bit of land that is there, but at its beginning it was a larger landmass and other areas were included. And she says man was originally a colossal pre-tertiary giant, and that he existed 18 million years ago must of course appear preposterous, but we have existed. Since we have become male and female, we have been on this earth for 18 million years. 5 more minutes and we'll close it. So we cannot look for a cradle because there were 5 different ones. And at the beginning of the Manvantara, she told us the Peter Lunar fathers started 7 lineages, in other words. Now, on page 77, we have looked at the diagram, and we read that each a different race of men externally and internally on those different zones were established. Esoteric philosophy assigns to humanity a oneness of origin, because we are all spiritual, insofar that its forefathers or creators were all divine beings. We come from divinity, though of different classes or degrees of perfection in their hierarchy. We just read there were 7 of them. Men were nevertheless born on 7 different centers of the continent of that period, at the beginning we are talking about. The evolution of the first race took place on 7 distinctly separated regions of the Ren, only Earth, which I said was the Arctic pole. So, science can look all it wants to, there will not be found these cradles because they were all in different places. Now, the original 7 races may be considered, it is explained, 7 aspects or degrees of that greater race. The physical bodies of a race start, it says, as vehicles for the most highly developed beings. Then as these beings, reaching a point at which they have gained all the experience afforded by those bodies, leave the race. So the great civilizations then start at its greatness and then slowly declines. Why? Because the souls, the highly developed souls that embody the highest races, once they have reached all of the experience that they can gain from that, leave the bodies. What comes next? The second group comes in, the second class, which is a little bit less developed. Then once they have gained all the knowledge and experience they can, they leave the bodies. Then the third class comes in. And slowly, where does it go? To savagery. Then the savages come in because they are the last group to enter, being 1 being the highest, 7 being the lowest. Then savages do exist among us at this time. When you go to Australia, you can see them. And Secret Doctrine says the descent applies only to the race bodies. While the forms may now house savage egos, the physical bodies still retain the name of the egoic race which evolved them, the highest, in other words. The highest evolves it, and then the lowest occupies it at the end. Let us remember then, Australian Bushmen are remnants of Lemurians. Who are the Lemurians? The 3rd race. Atlanteans being the 4th, Aryan, us being the 5th. And this is HPB from the Secret Doctrine, page 317. There were civilized people and savages in those days. Evolution achieved its work of perfection with the former, and karma its work of destruction on the latter. Perfection for the highly civilized, destruction for the savage, in other words. The Australians and their like are descendants of those who, instead of vivifying the spark, dropped into them by the flames. Who are the flames? The Dayan Chahwanic host, or the archangels of the Bible. Extinguished it by long generations of bestiality. The Aryan nations could trace their descent through the Atlanteans from the more spiritual races of the Lemurians, in whom the sons of wisdom had personally incarnated. So we're talking about at the highest, the progenitors incarnate to start this revolving cycle. And while in some regions of the earth, a portion of mankind preferred leading a nomadic and patriarchal life, and in others, savage man was hardly learning to build a fire and to protect himself against the elements, his brothers, these sons of wisdom who initiated those cultures, built cities and cultivated arts and sciences. So, we don't come from the monkeys, we do not start at the bottom, we come from divine progenitors who give of their essence as a gift to humanity. So, savagery then and civilization run in kind of parallel lines. When the highest in descending order uses the bodies, then at the end of that, the savages use it. So, in the cyclic processes of evolution, the appointed hour has again struck for the preparation of another new race, the 6th subrace. 6th subrace, which is going to take place right here. it was very interesting to read. This is a question asked in this article. We are told we are the fifth subrace of the fifth root, but in this article there is a very small suggestion. It says, are we the seventh family of the fifth root, or do we belong to the first family of the sixth? Very interesting question. Are we the seventh family or the first of six? Everybody has to think of themselves as to how to answer that question. What is it that we need to consider? And I'm going to close it here. It's very sketchy, but we can perhaps have another one and continue with it. What is it they're looking for? Our facial color? Our hair texture? No. What determines the culture? Well, sorry? Consciousness? PSY. Our psychic nature is developing, but it is not the highest nature we have. What is it? The spiritual. Who is dependent only on their psychic nature? What is psychics? These are mediums. They become passive. They don't participate in life, in other words. This is what the literature warns us against. Not to develop our psychic nature, but to develop our spiritual nature in conjunction with it. What's the difference? The psychic nature is the lower mind. The lower mind is embedded in materiality, power, personal gain. But when we add a spirituality to our nature, where have we gone? We have gone to universal principles. The general nature of things, the benefiting of humanity becomes our objective to the degree that we can. And at this stage of our development, the masters say, don't expect great things of yourselves because you are not at that level of development. You must bring this in yourself, this change we just talked about, within yourself. And we read from the book that said, look inside of you, don't go outside looking for externalities, but the answers lie within you. Why? We cannot perceive anything in the universe but through that light which is in ourselves. Other people cannot do it for us, we must do it for ourselves. And Theosophy warns us not to go to other people, because if the person says, I can help you, can they really help you? Yeah, each one of us must make a decision. We also said that our physical, I don't know how to spell physical. I know. Physical.
I don't think you know how to spell it.
Okay, I don't know how to do it. Physical.
Take away the I.
Never mind. You know, my brain is going a bit off. It's okay. I can be off a little bit now and then. I'm human too.
That's right.
Okay, so we have to do this work. Even if it is 1 meal you provide for the other, okay? Or this was a great idea. Somebody was in line at the Costco petrol line, and he says, I'm paying for yours too. This is my Christmas gift to you. I don't know you, but I'm gifting it to you. What a wonderful thought, I thought. I saw it and I thought, wow, this is really wonderful. People are truly awakening that the other is part of myself too. I am part of everyone in here as they are all within me. That essence that comes from the progenitors is that beautiful light, love, compassion, and kindness for all in each human heart. So we share this bond, so we can bring that change about, united, working together. So now we will open it for, yes.
You answered. You answered
Yeah.
my question. I think I'll be right
Andrew,
to you, Andrew.
yeah.
When you talked when you closed, you answered my question. But when I was listening to you about the third race and the Bushmen, my question was, do I need to go to Australia to find savages? Seems like we got some savages among us too. So, just to
Yeah, they exist everywhere.
elaborate on that while I get the mic to Andrew.
Okay, there's the mic behind.
Okay, so I actually have two questions.
Yes?
They may both relate to each other. You talked about the progenitors and
Yeah.
the highest beings, the highest consciousness coming in first. And then progressively, those of lower consciousness come in till we finally get the savages. So the question is, why, when you have those that are the highest, that have already come in, have modeled, have established a certain type of higher energy, why would those of a lower consciousness come in? Why wouldn't it result in higher and higher and higher versus higher, lower and lower and lower? And which leads to the second question, which is, why would we have rounds that would be, and I'm not sure if this is the terminology, the golden, the silver, the bronze, and then all of a sudden
Yugas.
Kali Yuga, which is dark ages. It seems like everything is working in the reverse, and if you could explain that, I would really be grateful.
Well, we need another hour. Okay. Why do we start from the highest and go lower? That was physical forms we were talking about. Now there are two aspects to your question. One, at the beginning of the Mahamanvantara, when the moon chain transferred its energy to the earth chain, the first group that inhabits as monadic life wave on globe A is the highest developed. Why? Because each one has to go through this process, okay? Each one has to go through this process. When we are on A, the first group comes from here, and because the monadic essence is necessary to develop the environment as well, no advancement can take place without the monadic essence being there. So the highest come because they were the highest here. They went from A to B first, from B to C first. So they developed the first. But when we come to G, all and everything has to come to G. But A, when we are in G, when the seventh comes to G, A has already transferred his energy from the moon chain to the earth. That's going to be earth. It's not solidified, it's etheric, okay? So the monadic comes in to cultivate it also, the environment. We're the ones that, as monadic essence, we're the ones that cultivate what our environment is going to be, because we're going to gain experience there. So the highest goes from here to here to here. We're in D, okay? D is the most concrete substance, okay? So that's one process. And at the middle of this round, the monadic essence that has reached human life is all it's going to be. No other enters, because they cannot develop themselves further into human kingdom. So the animals that have not, or the monads that were the highest in the lower groups that are waiting to enter the human kingdom will not be able to do so in this Mahamanvantara. In the next one, when Earth gives its energy to a chain in this fashion, then they will become the humanity of that. What are we going to be? HPB says we're all going to be divine essences, divine beings, so we're going to be the teachers and the architects in the futures to come.
Is that automatic?
No. Up to the middle of the fourth round, it is the life wave moves as a flow. Nature moves everything forward to a higher expression of itself. But at the middle of the fourth round, when we have reached self-consciousness, that process no longer works. It is, according to each human being, self-devised, self-induced effort to move further. In other words, we are self-conscious. Our right is choice. But this philosophy says we are to become ethical and moral beings who can choose correctly. Okay, that's one part of your question. The second part of that question is about the races. This is an evolutionary process. This is also an evolutionary process, but it is going on around us now. We're told that the highest culture comes about because the egos, or the monads that incarnate in that higher aspect or the higher expression of the material form that has been constituted, is the highest of its kind, because it's initiating that process. But culture goes from culture to culture, because once those egos that are highest develop leaves those bodies, the second group occupies it, because they also have to cultivate their natures to be suitable and improve. But once the bodies are used in that way consecutively by the first group, second, third, fourth, then the savages enter them, because they also need an opportunity to either improve themselves or not, however the case may be. But they are kind of far behind. That is why we're told that from this point on, no other monadic groups will enter who are not already human. Because human, imagine at the beginning of entering this lifestyle or life form, where it is and how it's going to progress along at the end of the seventh. There is a progression, but it is done in a consecutive manner and in an organized way. Even though it looks to us it isn't, those progenitors, she tells us, watch over Earth. Earth also has a region. They're called regions or cosmogrators. There we go. Secret, yes, I'll come to you in a minute. Regions and cosmogrators. Earth develops from inside out. It is not a dead piece of earth. It is alive. It has a region, but she says this region is inferior to all of the other regions, because the other globes of the solar system are far more advanced than we are. That each has its humanity and all of the other things that constitutes that humanity, but it is particular to its own environment. Venusians are far more intellectual and more solid than we are. And I was shocked when I read, more solid than, what kind of solidity though? Because their atmosphere is sulfuric acid. And each globe, all the way to Jupiter, Saturn, and all them, they're called the divine globes in here. And so their regions are of a higher order, obviously, because they're far more developed, and their environment has much more refined substance. She says Earth substance does not exist anywhere else but here. Yes, Dupree?
I was thinking about what you said earlier concerning the several things about the abnormal becoming the normal, and they have these shows that come on, these movies about, for instance, the mutants, and they are kids and some beings who have these special abilities that appear abnormal, but it's right in line with what you're saying about eventually we will acquire these psychic abilities, and these kids, they can do all these things to now to us seem miraculous or magical. Secondly, the problem of UFOs that have been documented worldwide. These beings or visions that we're seeing could possibly be coming from other levels of the Earth chain instead of out of space, meaning that coming from different planets. Since we have 7 globes on the Earth chain, and that's because we're on globe D here, that's not saying that globe C or A are completely vacant. There could be a lot of things going on.
Yes, but your consciousness is attuned only to D. And when you're on D, you don't perceive the others. So if they have a material existence, they also belong to the materiality of D, whether it is this D, Martian D, Saturn D, or whatever. All of the globes that we see in our solar system are D, because we are at that level of consciousness that we can perceive it. So you would not be able to see it if it was from the others, because it is interblended already. But I can't say that I see it. I don't even know what's in the air. You know, you have to cultivate those intuitional, internal abilities, which is going to be our natural inheritance, because she's talking about permeability. I just read it, that we are going to be subsisting next to all the new generation that is coming in as abnormal, but in time their numbers are going to be greater than us, because we are declining as we are going further on and on, that they are going to be the majority. So those of us who can fit ourselves into that mode of life by cultivating these qualities in ourselves will go on. And the rest of it, she says, will just disappear from the face of the earth like you never existed. Well, that saddens me tremendously. I want everybody to go on. My mother fed me 9 months, spoon-fed me. She helped me grow up. She helped me walk. She taught me English. Why would we waste all these resources that are spent on us to generate us and bring us into the world so we can gain experience? Let us gain the right experience, right spirituality, right mode of thinking. Let us move forward. It is our responsibility to do so and help everybody else who is ready to move in this fashion forward. This is not a choice. The hour has already struck. Yes?
This is just a comment. I
Yeah.
don't know about the spirituality of the young people these days, but I have noticed that they speak so incredibly quickly. Every one of them speak. The speed at which they grasp ideas, the speed at which they express themselves is so quick. I feel so slow compared to them. So they may be part of that beginning race. I just hope that the spirituality catches up with that level of speed.
Well, this student has looked around. What is the abnormality is what this student is thinking, because they're the abnormal amongst us. So what's abnormal about them? Who can tell? I mean, what is she talking about? This student does not know, okay? But that does not necessarily indicate anything. We're not talking about intellectuality. That is the quality of the lower mind. The divine mind is the one that looks at things directly and is the knower. Who are we? The knower. I am the knower. In meditation, every day, remind yourselves, I am the knower. I am the light. I am perfect. I am complete. I'm spirit. I am the monadic essence.
And I recall someplace where she did say that the psychiatrists, or those people in those psychological fields, will have special work to do, meaning that these people or younger people or people coming up will be presenting problems and challenges to the accepted field, what they have defined already as real, regular, or stuff like that. But another thought, you mentioned Aryan, and how did Mr. Hitler how did Mr. Hitler come about the idea of them being Aryans?
Okay.
In there?
Side issues we're not really concerned about. but she also tells us that sometimes, because of karmic effect being our due as nations, that we had as a nation done something in the past, and as a result of that, what comes is our due. However, she says, there are those like the Bushmen or the, where is that? Somewhere in here, I read it. It was very interesting. I read so many articles, I don't know where I read both anymore. I don't think I have that one. But however, she says that those sometimes who come do not belong to the fifth race, but are of a lower root. But their expression is an uncaged tiger. Those uncaged tigers appear amongst us, but they're not really of the fifth, but they're either a bushman or something that is put amongst us out of time and space. I read it in one of the articles, but I don't know where I read it, so that should answer your question. He came and did what? He was an agent of destruction, really, when you look at it. But what does that also say about the nation he came to? Because they all went along with it at the beginning, and then people started separating themselves and not going along with the general mode of living. What is asked of us today maybe does not reflect that life, but what is United States involved in? We're in Afghanistan. We're in the Middle East. What is it we're giving? Are we giving them culture? Are we giving destruction? Are we killing? Killing is never an answer. And as a nation, our money goes to all these corners, including Israel. I must also say that too, because Israel gets billions of dollars aid. And what is it they're doing with our money? I saw it on 60 Minutes, and he says, we cannot talk about the government's policy and the living that is people are doing over there. It's not apparently coincidental to one another. And I'm thinking, well, you need to change your thinking. Government is supposed to guide us, but I'm saying that we cannot just put ourselves in the middle of this bubble and pretend that this stuff does not exist. We are part of this nation. We can become a good example to those around us by not going along with the general that is taking place. And I have nothing against Israel, by the way. They are people and they have every right to exist, but we do help them a lot, and we need to hold them responsible for the money we give them. Our president at the beginning tried to do something about it, and he almost got voted out of office because he extended a hand to the Arabic world in the Middle East. This is what it needs to take place. We need to extend a hand to every human being all around the globe. Yes? You agree?
You mentioned that we are not from the ape.
Of course not.
Well, humanity. We're not from the apes.
No.
And then you have, on the other hand, the priests, like the Pope and the other priests, saying that we're from the Garden of Eden. So how does theosophy reconcile that great problem?
It isn't really a problem if you know the root.
Meaning that, I mean, you know, you got some who believe in creationism on one hand, the scientific people, or no, the fundamentalist religious types. And then you got the scientists that are saying anthropoid ape out of Egypt or Ethiopia or something like that, saying that man descended or man started on the African continent. So theosophy, with all of its resources and knowledge, how does...
Okay, I do not belong to the adepts yet. We are all going to belong to the adepts by the time the 7th round comes around. So, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. We are all on the way to perfection, to emancipation, and coming back to help all those who have not reached emancipation. So before you go to bed each night, remind yourself that we are this divinity. We are divine beings. And having answered that, now, in the Secret Doctrine, she tells us that the Lemurians once solidified at the middle of the third round, they became so very preoccupied with their surroundings. It was like new toys given to children to play with, because we never experienced it before. So like you give something new to a child, oh, they're all excited, they want to know all about it, they open it up and they cannot put it together, but they want to know all its parts and this, that, the other. We were just like that. With joy, we went out to experience the world of substance. But what happened? We got immersed in it and we forgot our spirituality. Not all of us, because she tells us that the Atlantean stock was started from the spiritual shishta or sishta that was left from that race. However, they became so glamored that they took animals for partners, because at that time the lines had not segregated that. Apes come from us, we do not come from them. In the fourth race, Atlanteans repeated it. Now, in the third race, they didn't know any better. But in the fourth race, they knew what they were doing. They chose to do it, in other words. We are given the choice, but that choice has to be used wisely. Atlanteans sank because they were doing all these what would be immoral stuff from this student's standard, but at that point I'm not quite sure what word we would use to express it. But the apes is a product of human and animal life co-joining, not the other way around. Yeah.
When you mentioned the Atlanteans sank because they were not behaving, not acting, let's say in the highest, the question would be, is it because of the energy that they created that was a negative energy that actually had an effect on the material land that caused their demise? Or was it that there is a higher divinity from the, let's say, the progenitors or from the regents or however you call it, that actually set that kind of thing into motion?
Yeah, they do set it into motion, because it is so stated that all of the positive side came out in force. When there is wickedness, the nature side always wins, because not only the brotherhood or perfected galaxy of human beings, but the nature is on the side of good, because we said that Kama, the Kama Diva, that love that is at the core of that essence that gives rise to us, is for the benefit of all. So when one part grows in the opposite direction and it is overflowing, what were they doing? They were using sidereal powers. What are these? Electromagnetic powers, because they were spiritual, they knew how to use it. And they were directing it for getting rid of parts of the continent, or with all of the humanity on it, because they would not come under their rule. So they were destructive, they were destroying, creating things in a havoc. And so they sank. Who were the Atlanteans? Us. We were the Atlanteans, because HPV tells us Atlantean minds are coming back and causing havoc again. Why? Have we changed is what we need to ask. The spirituality is there, but there is a whole bunch of unstable life going around us. We are the Atlanteans, and those minds who were wicked and cunning are amongst us again. Well, look at Wall Street. What is it expressing at this time? Is it a spirituality and concern for the welfare of all, or did they steal the nation's money? We all have to answer these questions, but we need to be aware as to what. We are not involved in politics as theosophical students, but each one of us need to be aware as to what exactly is going on around us. We cannot just close our eyes and pretend it's not there. So the wickedness is there, immorality is there too, because...
Why they are continuing to come?
Sorry?
You just said that some of those wicked minds, they are out of evolution. But Why?
out of sequence.
Sequence.
Out of sequence.
But where they go? Do they go to Wall Street?
They're everywhere. What I meant is that sometimes a savage monad incarnates amongst us out of time and space, sort of, because they don't belong there, but we karmically, through our own wickedness, we pull them in. Attraction, repulsion is the law of nature. So we are responsible for our environment. It's the mind, the quality of the mind, and the, what is it, did it say? Have an intellectual, no, have a intelligent heart, and what?
Feeling hard.
No, intelligent heart and a feeling head. In other words, the head has to become loving too. You cannot decide with the mind, with thinking, that this is not worth it. Just like a politician who got up at some dinner, and the one that did not get in, and said that 50% of us were not people. Well, what are we then? Because what, we're on social programs of help. Ooh, well.
What you just said right there relates to, when you said we draw them to us, relates to, I think, part of what Andrea's first question was about the different, she said something about the yugas, I mean, like the golden age.
Oh, I'm sorry,
yeah.
I didn't answer that.
And just like how in Kali Yuga, the black magician, coming back to Atlantis, conditions are, the environment, to use your term, is so right that you pull these people to you. And then as to why you have the different ages again, within these time periods, you have cycles and dualities and frictions, and it just sets up. You don't progress just straight away, all the way up. You know, in order
regression comes into it too. You go forth and you go regress.
Exactly.
It's not all progression for each human soul. Depending how we think and what we do, we can go forward, but we also regress. All of the nations go through those processes too. That we go forward and then we regress sometimes. We don't go forward. Yes. And we will answer the yugas.
Okay.
Well, ask your
Okay,
question.
So, if there is the all, and there is nothing that exists except the all, then what we perceive as negative is still all of what happens, whether it's positive or negative, and it's within our individual perceptions as to whether we say this is positive or negative. It still is part of the all. Isn't there a process that what we perceive as evil at a particular time in our existence, let's say Hitler, as our student back there had mentioned, or the Atlanteans in their process with using destruction rather than construction. Isn't it possible that when you have situations today that we can resonate to with the difficulty with Wall Street, that we do see people rising up because they are so profoundly greedy? We do see humanity in certain pockets rising up to be able to express that we need more ethics in our governance. So sometimes these evils, what we see as evil, is evil in itself, and we acknowledge that. But it seems to be part of what feeds in and what helps us accelerate as a humanity in evolvement, to be able to address that, to know that maybe evil at its most extreme could be during the time of Hitler. So that becomes a barometer of how we never want to be again. The Wall Street, with their greed, people speak up and say, we now see the extremes.
No, let me please address your question.
Sure.
I don't mean to cut you, but
No,
I've run out of time and people are getting ready to leave. And I will finish it, and then we can talk some more if we wish, because we have the guitar class, sorry. When you look at the Wall Street, this student has read a book that was written about the events of the Wall Street, and now on Moyer's program a couple weeks ago, this student saw two representatives from the other side came to discuss as to what has happened, and they're saying that nothing has changed, that what was being done is being done on greater scale. People don't want millions of dollars anymore, they want billions of dollars. So to answer your question, yes, if the people at the top perceive what they're doing is wrong, but in the first place, if they had an ethical or moral core. By the way, morality is not a code of ethics that we follow. Morality comes from the core of the heart. It becomes kindness, love, generosity, and all of the positive aspects of human life when it is expressed, because the human being is correlated within that core. It is expressing the inner core on the outer world. But the Wall Street behavior came from greed, materiality, and giving themselves the right to steal. Okay, that to me does not show any moral behavior or whatever. And I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about the general behavior. And then we have the government inviting those people to come and sort the problem. It's like inviting the foxes into the hen coop or something. I said to her, in my mind, as a human being who are not experienced in that field, that does not look right to me. Does it look right to you? And I said, look at that guy. He cannot look you in the eye. He was so deceitful, he wouldn't face you with his eyes. He's doing like this, like he's guilty. Well, he knows he's guilty. He's lying.
Who knows more about crime than the criminal?
Okay. Anyway, that is a side issue, and that is this student's opinion. And I bring these issues to the floor so that we become aware of the environment we live in, because it is up to us to do something about it. If we just go along with the general flow, we're not doing something about it. So the students of theosophy have a responsibility to disseminate the philosophy, which is brotherhood and unity of mankind. Once you put that in your heart, all of your actions spring from that. And your morality then becomes an expression of your daily life, which is where Wall Street needs to go too. So change will come, but it is karma that balances things. Nothing and no one can get away with anything that is not within the karmic law. Thank you.
You said you were going to touch on the gold and silver, bronze,
I will
and
talk
iron?
to Andra because I don't want to hold the group anymore. We're finished. I will talk to her separately about this.